number of years, and he's one of the Cherokee elders. And I asked him, Noah, are you Cherokee? Or are you Tuscalero? Well, I'm not really sure.
Are you chilly? Are you cold?
There's a draft coming in there.
Okay, well, those windows are open. It's not the door. It's the windows on the end.
I'll shut that up. Or it's just closed in.
Here.
No, the door's not latched though.
It's coming from the window.
Yeah,
It's running along the wall.
See if this is better.
I can see daylight coming around the door jam.
See if that's better.
That door has got a breeze to it.
The door is? Okay, well, I didn't shut it.
It's shut.
The siding fell off.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
So another gift that I think is important besides the gift of compassion is the gift of names. Just think of all the places that you can go that you can't pronounce the name. Ain't it great?
A lot of them.
How many of you been to Alaska? Yeah, that's a shame. When you get to go there, you'll find thousands of places that you can't pronounce the name. But you'll never forget them. And if you ever ask why they named them what they did, you'll really know why that name is there. Absolutely incredible and beautiful places. So, in a way, we've honored the heritage and we've honored the natives in all areas of the country by saving the names.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'd like to, at this time, I'd like to turn this over to John, let him talk for a while.
Okay.
We're gonna then take a little break, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna have like a open floor discussion about what you want to talk about, what you want to know. And then after that, we'll have a closing, and we'll let Ella do the closing and let her lead that part, okay?
Cool. So what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about myself first and hand out some cards here. This is my business card. I don't like to call myself a shaman. People look at me and say, oh my God, you know, here comes this witch doctor dude. And that's not the case. Shamans in the Native American culture, just for your information,
Shaman.
come in very many different types, just like a doctor. They have specialties. Mine is healing. Help you of past traumas or events that might have been in your life, and energy work. Along with the chakras and other things that you might have heard of. There's also some Native American concepts and teachings that I've been taught that I'll be more than willing to talk to you about at another time, but I just want to let you know that I'm available for that, and you can contact me through Facebook or through email.
Definition of a shaman.
Can you read that?
That's the move forward, mind, body, and soul. That's what a shaman is. That's an Indian title.
Yes. What I do is I stand between the physical and the spiritual to connect with my ancestors and also yours to provide healing in this life.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we have, from the age of birth to 7 years old, you've heard the term that we're like a sponge, and it's very true. You're actually in a theta state. It's almost like if you're halfway between dreaming and being awake. And so you're constantly looking and finding things, and you're taking stuff in. You take in people's emotions, whether it's your families or your environment or whatever else. And you can take on things that you can't conceptually and intellectually understand why you feel the way you feel through a limited belief or a physical ailment. And what I do is help you get past that.
A great spirit, huh?
It's more than a great spirit. It's everything in the ether of the universe ever known across eternity.
Right.
And all barriers.
Yeah. Like, if you noticed before we were drumming, I was sitting here connecting to my elders, my ancestors, those alive and dead. Because I have a 12-page outline, and I didn't plan any of this so far, because this is the way they work through me. Here's the notes. Get rid of page 1 and 2. So, let's begin there. So bear with me if you want to take some notes or anything, please do. If you have a question, please don't interrupt me and allow me to get through my presentation. When I'm through, you're more than welcome to ask as many questions as you like. Okay? We've all heard of Atlantis. Atlantis was, in my estimation, and what I've been told, was in the Atlantic Ocean. And during that time, there were some very skilled masters who taught let's just call it a mystery school. And strangely enough, very much like this drum, there were 3 bands on the islands, and they were red, black, and white. And they all represented something. I won't go into specifics of that. The strange thing enough about it is that for my tribe, the Lenni Lenape, which is in the Delaware River Valley, those are our colors. Now people will say, okay, what's the significance of that? We are direct descendants of Atlantis. If you look up the name Lenni Lenape, it means the wise men or the original peoples. So for me, there's significance in that. Are we the only ones? Definitely not. Because I believe that Atlantis was most likely closer to the equator than what it was New York, let's say, or Delaware area that we know of today. And the Mayans, 2012 years ago was a big topic. But what people don't bring out in the news is that how widespread that they are, because I consider the Mayans my brothers and sisters. The Mayans, believe it or not, had built a ruin in the foothills of Georgia and was discovered within the last, 5 to 7 years, something like that. So, and think about the knowledge that they had of the stars, So when they were in Atlantis, they knew by the earth movement and being connected to the earth that there was a devastating blow coming. So they headed for what is now known North America, that we call Turtle Island. South America, some continents, actually in France, they only consider 5 continents because they consider the Americas as all one. Okay, so it depends on what you're taught in school. But one of the most important things, the reason I mention Atlantis is because of the virgin birth. Because during those times, it was told that the women could literally impregnate, specialized women who were taught these things, could impregnate themselves with a female fetus. Now, the important part about that is that when we come to Jesus, like Mary, and Jesus was born, they had figured out how that happened. And it's very true. And in my estimation, from what I've heard, stories from other indigenous tribes, like you were asking, where did the connection with Earth and everything come from? It was from every literal indigenous tribe on the planet, every single one of them, because they're all, whether they're the Aborigines in Australia, I forget what they're called in New Zealand, the Druids in the you know, the English Isles and so forth, and all of them. So what I find out funny too is that when you look at the Lemurian civilization before that in Atlantis, and then of course the Mayans, how if you look at the energy torus of the Earth, it comes out of the North Pole and into the South Pole or vice versa, but that balance is right in dead center of the equator. And if you, like today, they say that human life began in the top of Africa near Egypt. Isn't it interesting that that's the center of energy? That balances out the energy, the male and female concept of energy, and brings it all together. Now, the reason, see, they're just telling me to go with it. The reason that I came up, or wanted to tell you that, was to tell you about a man by the name of the Great Peacemaker. But before there, I am going to say, I already mentioned that I am Lene Lenape. My grandmother was full-blooded. And we were also called the Delaware Indians. And the definition for the original people came from the white man, but also from our ancestors. So you see, Columbus never discovered it. And then if I'm going to go back into that, there's Eric the Red, I believe, or whoever he was,
Yep.
discovered and actually colonized in Greenland in 980 AD. And then eventually, there's places in Rhode Island. There's a large stone structure there, of course, over near like Minnesota and Green Bay and such, and clear into the 1400s before Columbus showed up. And then I read, did you see that this morning or last night, where they found a Stonehenge in Lake Erie?
Yeah, I knew about that, but I
didn't know about that until last night.
I knew about it before.
So you see, this information is still coming out. We just have to be more aware of it.
One of the things that they knew is, you know, you have all these people coming here and discovering America. And
We already did.
what the heck was the deal with those people, you know? The actual was a population here even prior to any of the Native Americans that just vanished.
Right. We were talking about that.
Nobody knows where they went. Poof, they were gone.
What type, what civilization? Jews? Humans? What?
Yeah, human beings.
Poof, they were gone. We don't know. Nobody knows. There's evidence that they were here. Structures were built. Things were built. What's interesting is some of the structures that they built, the mounds that they built prior to any Native American or any civilization, I can take you and show you them. I can take you and show you hieroglyphs. I have some pictures of hieroglyphs on my phone that are pre any Native American on this planet. Anyone. And poof, they were gone. In the blink of an eye. So where'd it go?
The rapture took place.
Right. Forget it.
How old is he?
It can be, that's something
Millions of years old.
yeah.
So they were the star people that all of the indigenous people talked about who
came here.
were here, left,
Right.
and they will return.
And return. And, you know, they could have left like that, or maybe they're still here.
Or they have returned and
Well, think
unbeknownst to
think
us.
tanks have debated on this for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years. I mean,
You know?
you get
So-
with some of these scholars and they go on
Right.
and on. It's pretty interesting.
It is interesting because it makes you wonder what the real essence of life is and where it originated, which was one of the other things that I was going to say about Lemuria and Atlantis. And if you go back to the four corners around New Mexico and Arizona and Utah and what's the fourth state?
Colorado.
Colorado, yes, thank you very much. They'll tell you different stories of that God did actually come down and speak to them. And one of the, because there's so many things that fall into the number four, the four directions, you know, and everything else. And the important thing about this is that there's four races of people, and that's why if you look at anything related to Native American, you're going to see red, white, black, and yellow. That also stands for the four races. Okay? All of them had a purpose according to their visitation from God. But the thing that I always remember is that we, the Native Americans, along with other indigenous tribes from around the world, not just us, are the earth keepers. That's why when we try to give the, you know, our world leaders our definition and warnings of what you're doing or not doing to the planet, have to be heeded. You have to heed what we're telling you. I just seen a recent documentary. They got a one-time visit in the mountains of Peru by a indigenous tribe that's still there. And they used to be clear up into the mountains all the way down to the ocean, but they have advanced into the mountains because of, well, everybody wanted to control them and everything. And long story short, just last year they allowed a reporter from BBC to enter in so that they could speak to their elders, and they said, now's the time to make the change. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Now, back to what I was saying, and just as a side note, we were talking about the Europeans back around 1000 AD or so. There's also a story, and you can find this out because there's DNA proof of it, that a Native American woman was one of the first Native Americans to make a trip to Europe on a ship. It was a Viking ship. And why, you know, some people will say, well, then why are, you know, some Native Americans blue eyes or blonde hair? Well, here you go. That's just one example.
One example.
And it's sort of like what Al was saying before, and I've always said this too, because we are extended families. Whenever someone says, I'm Cherokee and I'm this and I'm that, I just crack up laughing because it wasn't, everybody worked as one and worked in hand. And most were nomadic. And what I mean by that is that they weren't gypsies so much, but they would go and live in one place, one part of the year, and then move somewhere else. And then when they were done there, instead of moving back to where they were previously, they found a new place to camp. Why did they do that? To keep and remain the balance of nature and not deplete the resources in that area. So anytime that there was conflict between tribes, it was because somebody probably felt like somebody got too close to their hunting area or something like that, basically. But it's no different than, okay, we have Christmas coming up. If you have a certain custom and your brother and his family have a certain custom that you learned from your parents, but there's a little differentiation in there, that's all it is. That's the difference between one tribe and another, because they're all still related. And that goes for the nations as well. The only reason I think personally, from what my elders have told me, is the reason that they have these nations were so that they could, it's like anything else, so they could gain resources for strength, for survival. But it wasn't just survival. See, that's another misconception of society, thinking that all these poor Native Americans, you know, they're living in the cold, they're barely surviving. I'm going to tell you what, they got a better life than you guys will ever have. I can guarantee you. They knew how to warm stones with the fire inside of a hut to not only sleep on, but also warm their water. That's what they bathed with. They had storage facilities so that animals would not get into them for all of their food. They had fresh food every day because they never took any more than what they needed. And they were also they love to go out, and if there were berries and stuff, yes, they would take a certain amount of berries for later.